The prophecy of Edgar Cayce about cats is unfolding right now. Imagine the cat in your home turning its head just so, fixing you with that slow, unreadable gaze, and the world outside falling briefly away. Imagine the vibration of a low purr moving through your chest like a steadying drumbeat, and a sense, not of magic performed for you, but of company arrived at exactly the right moment. If you have a cat nearby, pause for a second and meet its eyes. Let that moment be the question we carry through this hour. What if these animals are more than companions? What if they are helpers sent into our lives at times when our inner balance falters? A little later, I'll ask you to do something very simple. Look into your cat's eyes tonight and consider what their arrival meant. But first, let's trace how that feeling, that intuition that a feline's presence is purposeful, connects to a prediction spoken nearly 80 years ago by Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet. In a wartime reading from 1943, Cayce described an era of spiritual forgetfulness and the placement of animal helpers to guide and comfort people through that lapse. He did not specify every detail, but he did foreground the idea that animals would play a new active role in human healing and spiritual recall. We are not treating Cayce's words as scripture. We are not claiming that every purring cat is a miracle worker. What we are doing is standing at the intersection of an old prophecy, growing contemporary testimony, and a cluster of scientific observations, and asking whether a pattern is emerging that feels to many like more than coincidence. Edgar Cayce's life and his 1943 reading are the historical anchor here. Known for delivering trance readings on health, past lives, and spiritual principles, Cayce spoke in a period when the world itself seemed to be reeling from massive loss and moral confusion. In that atmosphere, he hinted that animals would be placed among humans to provide comfort and to help restore what had been lost in our collective spirit. For decades, that idea lived mostly in spiritualist circles and in the memories of people who followed Cayce's work. But in the last 2 decades, as more people have shared intimate accounts of their relationships with pets, and as some researchers have begun to explore the ways animals affect human physiology and emotion, the suggestion that animals, and cats in particular, are playing a distinctive therapeutic role has moved from anecdote into something that feels like a cultural trend. But before we rush to explanation, let's hold the uncertainty with care. When we speak of science in this space, we will use words like reported, preliminary, and correlational. When we speak of personal stories, we will treat them as deeply meaningful experiences that nevertheless don't establish universal laws.
When we speak of prophecy, we hold it as a lens, a frame through which people have been interpreting a rising pattern. Now, if this idea resonates with you and you have a cat nearby, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. If nothing else, sign up so more stories like this can find their way here. Stay with us. Let's move from the prophecy to the living evidence people are bringing forward. There are 3 threads that come together: the peculiar physical qualities of cats, especially their purr, the intuition of owners who sense timing and purpose in a cat's arrival, and a wave of reports, rescue stories, bedside vigil accounts, and calmer, steadier practices of meditation, suggesting that cats can influence human emotional and sometimes physical states. Start with the purr. It is easy to laugh off the steady rumble we call a purr as simply an expression of contentment. And indeed, a cat purrs in comfort. Yet researchers and clinicians who study animal-human interaction have pointed to the mechanical properties of purring, the frequencies generated, the rhythmic nature of the sound, as potentially linked to healing processes. Some exploratory studies and veterinary observations have noted that the frequencies cats produce while purring fall into ranges that, in other contexts, stimulate tissue growth and bone repair. Specific frequency bands, often cited loosely in popular reporting as somewhere around the mid-20s to low hundreds of hertz, are associated in preliminary research with improved bone density and reduced inflammation in other mammals. These findings are early and they are not definitive. What we can say with confidence is that the purr is a patterned, multi-frequency vibration that communicates presence and may interact with human bodies and nervous systems in measurable ways. Beyond frequency, cats are organisms tuned to detect subtle energetic changes in their environment. Many owners describe cats appearing at doorways precisely as emotional storms intensify, or settling on a chest at the moment of panic. These are not scientific measurements, they are lived experiences. They matter because thousands of people describe them in similar ways, steadying, anchoring, and bringing a kind of somatic calm. In interviews and online communities, names like Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell and Dr. Marcus Chen appear alongside accounts of biofield research and measurements of electromagnetic shifts in the presence of animals. Those names are reported in conversation within the community. Their specific claims should be verified before being treated as established science. Still, the broader point remains. There are researchers paying attention, and there are reported findings that suggest an interface between animal warmth, rhythmic sound, and human physiology. Now, let's move into the human stories, the places where the prophecy and the science meet the messy, urgent lives that give this discussion its power.
Isabella's story is the one many people tell first. She was in a slow, deep slide into depression, not a sudden crisis, but an erosion, mornings that stretched without energy, friends who said, "You look fine," while she felt hollow, a mounting sense that life had lost its flavor. A friend persuaded her to adopt a rescue cat from a shelter that had a name your price policy, an act of kindness disguised as a practical solution. Isabella named him Phoenix because of the way he looked, a small, steady-eyed tabby with a patch of fur like a burn scar. For weeks, Phoenix was simply a presence, curling behind books, sleeping in the sink, moving in and out of Isabella's orbit. Then one night, during a moment Isabella later described as a near sob without tears, Phoenix climbed onto her chest and lay over her heart. The purring was low and wide, and it seemed to steady her breathing in a way nothing else had. Over the following months, she found it easier to get out of bed, to keep appointments, to accept therapy and medication as part of her recovery. She told friends that Phoenix didn't cure her by himself. He didn't take away the need for professional care. But in the quiet, relentless way of a living rhythm, he became a tether. Maria's story carries a different gravity. Her grandmother's death was expected. Decades had worn the body thin, and the family gathered in the small hospice room knowing the time had come. For days, when the machines were quiet and the family whispered prayers, a stray cat began to visit the window ledge outside the room. On the last evening, when breath came in slow intervals, the cat slipped through an open door and settled at the foot of the bed, then slowly moved to rest her head on the grandmother's blanket. The breathing eased in the room. Relatives who were once tear-exhausted reported a sudden clarity, a softening that allowed them to speak and forgive and be present without panic. In the retelling, the cat's arrival felt like a permission to let go. This is not a claim that a cat can alter the course of dying. Death is complex and sacred. But many families in hospice settings report that animals can change the emotional tenor, offering a contained, embodied silence that contains grief and makes room for acceptance. Jennifer and Luna represent a calmer strand of the phenomenon, meditation companionship. Jennifer had spent years experimenting with mindfulness practices, sound baths and breathwork, always searching for a steady center. Luna appeared one autumn as a foster who never left. Quiet and attentive, Luna would join Jennifer during morning sits, aligning her body with the soft rhythm of breath. Jennifer began to notice deeper, more consistent states of calm. She spoke of synchronization, a feeling in which the cat's breathing, her own, and the room's silence folded into a singular field that made deeper reflection possible.
Again, no miracle, no guaranteed spiritual awakening, yet the reports of companion animals guiding or amplifying contemplative practice are numerous and consistent enough to be striking. We will also hear of children. Marcus and Lily, two little ones from different continents, both described their cats as old friends who tell them stories without words. Children's accounts are often shaped by imagination, and we should not make clinical claims about psychic abilities. Still, the repeated pattern of children intuitively connecting with an animal's mood, speaking calmly to them, or using the cat as a confidant is culturally widespread. These small testimonies may be part imagination, part innate attunement. They are also evidence of how animals fit into human developmental and emotional life. When we look beyond individuals, there is a larger social pattern. Shelter adoptions have risen in many countries over the past decades. Online communities dedicated to pet mindfulness and to cat therapy have multiplied. People share videos of cats appearing at crucial moments, and those videos ripple across networks fast. To skeptics, this looks like selection bias. People post the striking moments and ignore the many ordinary minutes. There is truth in that critique, but the frequency of these stories, their similarity, and the way they cluster around times of intense social stress, pandemics, economic uncertainty, cultural shifts, has led many observers to see a collective pattern. More people seeking comfort, more cats taken in, and more stories that tighten into a narrative of feline assistance. This is where Edgar Cayce's prophecy becomes an interpretive lens instead of a sealed prediction. Cayce spoke of an era when human souls would forget and animals would be placed as helpers. Many who have experienced a cat's steadying presence feel that Cayce's phrasing fits the modern moment, a network of human beings who are waking, slowly, imperfectly, assisted by animals that provide a kind of somatic memory. They remind us how to breathe, how to be present, how to carry pain without being swept away by it. The magnetism of the soul, a phrase often paraphrased from Cayce's circle, can be understood as an alignment. An animal arrives at precisely the right time because of affinities that are complex, subtle, and not fully captured by words. But what might that alignment look like in practice? What behaviors might suggest that a cat is offering what Cayce called help? And how do we distinguish mystical interpretation from instinct and training? First, notice where the cat positions itself. A cat that chooses to lie on your chest or near your head is not only seeking warmth, it may be responding to your heart rate and breathing. That close contact can have real physiological effects, lowering cortisol, elevating oxytocin, and providing a tactile rhythm that helps regulate the nervous system.
When a cat rests on your chest during a panic attack or after bad news, many owners describe an almost immediate damping of the worst edge of anxiety. Again, this is not a promise of cure. It's a supportive, embodied response that often complements other forms of care. Second, observe the stare. Cats will fix their gaze in ways that humans find almost interrogative. A slow blink, a focused look that seems to read your face. Some people report that when a cat stares at them during an emotional moment, the cat is sensing something in their biofield or their behavior. Others point out that a fixed gaze can be a species-specific way to assess and to mirror affect. Either way, many owners interpret that stare as being read and held. A slow blinking response, returned by the human, often calms the animal and the person simultaneously. Third, pay attention to timing. Owners frequently describe nights when the cat appears at the exact point when family members needed company, or when the animal arrives into a home within days of a crisis. The tendency to imbue timing with meaning is human. We are pattern-seeking animals. Yet when hundreds of stories cluster around the same theme, timely arrivals, synchronistic connections, it becomes reasonable to at least consider that something beyond pure chance may be at work. The term right time arrivals captures this experience, the sense that the cat's presence is not random but purposeful. Fourth, consider the chest/head positioning and the watcher at the doorway phenomenon. Cats often choose to be near a person's face or heart because it's warm, and because these locations allow them to monitor breath and movement. Families report cats who sleep by a relative with dementia, or who will not leave the bedside of a person recovering from surgery. Such behaviors could be explained by evolved attachment patterns, but for many of us, the behavior reads as a form of care, a warm, vigilant neighbor who offers quiet, nonverbal companionship. As we interpret these behaviors, two important cautions must be reiterated. 1. Cats are animals with instincts, not moral agents assigned to our salvation. They may sit on your chest because it's warm. They may stare because they are observing motion. We should not project on them motives they cannot have. 2. Many of the conditions people bring to animals, depression, serious illness, addiction, require professional care. Cats can be a powerful complementary force, but they are not a substitute for therapy, medication, or medical treatment. So how do we act if we hold both the possibility of spiritual assistance and the reality of ordinary explanations? Here are practical, ethically grounded steps that respect both the animal and the human need for support. First, cultivate observation. Slow down and notice your cat's patterns without immediately explaining them away. If your cat begins to sit on your chest during moments of panic, make a note. If the cat's presence helps you breathe more evenly, let the experience inform your self-care plan. Turning observation into gentle hypothesis, "This helps me when I'm anxious," can be more useful than declaring an absolute cause. Second, maintain healthy boundaries. If a cat's attachment becomes a burden to the animal or to you, for instance, if you are asking the cat to do emotional labor beyond what is appropriate, seek other supports. Pets deserve care that prioritizes their well-being, proper nutrition, veterinary checkups, and environments that allow them to express instinctual behaviors. We must not use spiritual narratives to justify neglecting an animal's needs. Third,
Integrate animals into broader therapeutic strategies. If you are working with a therapist or doctor, mention how your pet affects your mood. Many clinicians welcome such information because animals often provide important environmental feedback. In cases of severe mental health concerns, pets can be a bridge, a reason to wake, to eat, to connect, but professional interventions remain essential. Fourth, learn to read the small signs. A cat's head placement, the direction of its tail, the quality of its purr. These are pages in a book of feline communication. When a cat pushes its head against your hand, it is claiming a scent and a trust. When it curls against you in the night, it is offering warmth and a rhythm. Responding with calm presence, slow blinking, and gentle touch fosters mutual regulation. Fifth, listen to children. Their open imagination is not a scientific laboratory, but it often reveals a sensibility adults have dampened, an ability to accept that the world is alive with unseen patterns. Encourage children to respect animals, to speak gently, and to report what they experience without imposing adult skepticism that shuts down an important form of learning. Now, let us return to the larger picture. The pattern we are tracing, prophetic language from Edgar Cayce, rising human testimony, exploratory scientific inquiry, and a global surge in pet adoptions, does not prove a single metaphysical claim. It does, however, create a tapestry of meaning for many people, a tapestry that declares animals, and cats in particular, to be active agents of comfort and subtle healing in an era of spiritual anxiety. What might this mean culturally? For one thing, it reframes the pet-human relationship as a two-way street. We are not merely providers of food and shelter, we are partners in an exchange of attention, rhythm, and trust. When we honor the role animals play in our emotional lives, we are more likely to provide them with environments that support their well-being, which in turn strengthens the quality of companionship they offer. It also invites a different kind of reverence. To view cats as spiritual allies is not to worship them or to shirk responsibility. It is to treat them with curiosity, gratitude, and ethical care.
It invites us to practice small rituals, pausing to breathe, to meet a cat's gaze, to allow a purr to steady a frazzled moment, that restore us to the center of our own nervous systems. These are not grand transformations that promise miracles. They are humble practices of presence. As we near the close of this conversation, I want to offer one more vignette because it brings together many of these threats. A small community in a coastal town began keeping a shared registry of animals that entered hospice rooms and unexpected places. Over the course of a year, volunteers noted dozens of instances where cats arrived at moments of acute need. A woman staring at a wall of loss, a man refusing to speak after his partner's accident, a family reeling after a betrayal. The pattern was not universal, but it was remarkable enough that the local hospice center began to design volunteer programs that encouraged animal visits where appropriate. The result was not measured in cured disease, but in altered atmospheres, fewer outbursts of panic, more calm, more moments where families could speak without being consumed by raw emotion. That quiet containment is the value many owners describe when they say simply, "My cat helped me." It isn't a cure, it is an agent of ease. And now, with that in mind, let me ask you again to look at the cat you love. Notice the tiny island of warmth between its ears. Notice the slope of its spine, the silence it can make that holds a room. If you are alone, close your eyes and remember a night when the purr was the only thing steadying you, and let gratitude rise. If you are with family, share a small observation about your animal's ways, a story that becomes a thread in a larger communal tapestry. Edgar Cayce's words from 1943 asked us to be attentive, to watch for the placement of animal helpers in a time when many felt spiritually lacerated. We are not bound to his exact phrasing. We are not declaring his reading to be proof of a metaphysical law. But when prophecy, science, and human testimony converge in a way that knits meaning for so many, it is worth taking seriously. The thesis we are living through, that cats are assisting humans now in ways both mystical and material, is unfolding in front of our eyes,
in the quiet, ordinary places of the world. If you have a cat, take a moment tonight to look into its eyes. See the living being that chose, in its own inscrutable way, to share your space. Consider its arrival not as an accident, but as a possible thread in a larger pattern, a network of small interventions that over time can change the way we breathe, grieve, and remember who we are. If you feel moved, leave your story in the comments below. How did your cat arrive at the right time? How did a purr draw you out of a dark place? Your witness matters, because these stories are the soil in which cultural meaning grows.
Finally, a simple blessing for the moment. May the animals that walk with us bring steadiness when we are unsteady, comfort when we are grieving, and an honest mirror when we need to remember ourselves. May we care for them as fiercely as they care for us. Share your cat story in the comments below and share this video with someone who needs comfort today.